welcome to Cape Cod National Seashore. I am Ranger Alusha. This is the first time that we've done sort of like a community storytelling event here at the Provincetown Visitor Center. And also, since we are doing storytelling, I was just going to share a quick quote by a writer named Rebecca Solnit, who has written books about two of the other towns, cities that I have lived in while I was a park ranger, San Francisco and New Orleans. Stories are compasses and architecture. We navigate by them, and we build both our sanctuaries and our prisons out of them. So that's just an example of how powerful storytelling is. The group tonight, many of them are like way generations back Cape Codders, but whether that's true or not, they all pretty much lived here before the Seashore existed in 1961, so they have perspectives on what the Seashore means differently than someone like me who's only lived here for 5 years. I'm a Seashore. So I'm going to turn it over next to David Bernstein, who's the president of Friends of Cape Cod National Seashore.
Just want to welcome everybody. A couple minutes just about what Friends does, and because without people backing us and helping us financially, we can't do anything. The park has over 3,800,000 visitors a year and brings in $534 million to the Cape Cod economy. So think about where we would be financially without the park. Now, speaking to somebody over here who lives in the park, think about where we'd be if we didn't have the park, what it would look like. So our goal, as our mission, is to support the park in education, in entertainment. We also raise money for other items that the park doesn't have the money for. We've helped paint the Penniman House years ago. Before I was around, we helped move the life-saving station from Chatham, and good thing we did because we'll be in the ocean now. And we helped put furniture and other artifacts in it, help pay for that. And we're looking forward to doing other things. We're hoping to raise money to actually make the third floor of the life-saving station accessible, these new stairs. We're hoping to do a 3D film of the Highland Lighthouse, so that people who can't physically climb it will climb it in 3D, and people who don't come to the Cape will see it online. We hope to do something with the Wampanoag history, and those are the type of things we do, but we can't do it, and this is always, I hate asking for money, but we can't do it without members. We love members. So I welcome you, and I'm so glad we're able to sponsor this, and I appreciate all the work that the group, four people I work with, put in. All I did was fill out a couple of forms and work with Alicia. So thank you and welcome.
My name is Peter Cook, and this front row is what we call our writers group. Mel, Sheila, Russell, pardon my pointing, Avis, my cousin Avis, my wife Tanya. She's a Seashore. She's only been here since she was 17. Other rest of us are all natives. And we're going to go in this order, like I'm reading them off to you. And Belle's going to read two pieces, got two short pieces, and then I'll do a closing. So I'm not going to take a lot of time right now. But I'm glad you all are here tonight. Thank you.
Here we are, The Provincetown by Mel Joseph. For those of you who don't know me, I was born on West Vine Street in August of 1951. I was born in the same house my father was born in 1929. I was actually born in the same bedroom and in the same cast iron bed. When my father would tell this story, he would plant his tongue in his cheek and swear that it was a different man. I'm not so sure of that because they were poor as church mice. I met Jimmy Delpy in July of 1956 in the Watson's Court alleyway We were both 5 years old. His father had retired from the Navy, and they had moved into his wife's parents' home at the corner of Hallway and Watson's Court. Mr. Delpy was a state ranger, responsible for the caretaking and overlook of the Provincetown province lands. It wasn't long before Jimmy invited me along on he and his father's rounds. From the front seat of the forest green four-wheel drive pickup, we shared the sights and the sounds of the beaches out to Long Point Light and back, picking up stray buoys, tangled nets, errant boat cushions that washed the shore. Over the sandy trails to Hatches Harbor, through and around the airport, then out to the race, and west to Race Point Lighthouse. Then a major U-turn, traveling all along the backside, Mr. Delpy waving out his window at the strings of surf casters, and stopping just short ahead of the meadow. Drop the tailgate and eat our morning snack of PB&J sandwiches, with the Atlantic Ocean as our backdrop. His dog, Gypsy, ran frantically up and down the beach. Didn't every kid have these environmental experiences? Our morning snacks now complete. We take a bumpy, slow ride up the trails to Pilgrim Springs. The dirt paths overgrown, low brush slapping at the side barrels. Mr. Delpy would let us run around searching for arrowheads. We turned many arrowhead-shaped rocks into imaginary historical stories. Our powwow the Indian boy moments, loving all the animals in the woods. Mr. Delpy's morning responsibility is complete. He'd shoo us back into the cab, and we'd head out onto Route 6, and the sight we all revere. The sweeping shoreline that to all of us is home. A trip we made every day that summer of '56, and many more summers to follow, until the Cape Cod National Seashore took over the proprietorship of the province lands in '61. On other days, we'd bump our way along the dune camps and valleys, surveying the dune shacks, stopping to talk to the bohemian tenants, and Mr. Delpy offering up Jimmy and my services to shovel out encroaching sands around the different sides of the 10-cent homes with the $1 million views. Some days, the return back from the race would have a stop at the original visitor's observation tower on the hill. A simple outpost atop a creosote-soaked mismatch of telephone pole-length supports, with a winding stairway to the top deck, overlooking the vast sand desert all the way to the back beach on the Atlantic. The hill's name first appeared on an early U.S. Geological Survey map of Province. I think it was late 1800s. The name was Negro Hill. The obvious nickname was used for years by locals, and responsible sensibilities let it appropriately fade away. Every day of the summer, short of Sundays, I ran down the alleyway and stood at the passenger side of the international pickup awaiting Jimmy, Gypsy, and Mr. Delpy to come through the hedges gate. The day's sights of gulls and terns, for wild fox, birds, and deer were commonplace, and the bumping along the beach trails on the truck's bench seats had a comforting rhythm to it. In 1961, the JFK promoted Cape Cod National Seashore cost Mr. Delpy his state ranger's job. I missed the authoritative sight of him in his Green Ranger's work clothes that were unceremoniously replaced with a DeWart's Motors white chamois shirt with a Chevrolet logo on the pocket. In the late summer of '67, I was sitting on my Stingray bike, along with many other town kids, as the officials cut the ribbon to open up the bike paths to the province lands. Later that night, we rode roughshod over the trails, playing chicken in the moonless night. Total disregard for our safety. Bumps and bruises would be worn as badges of courage. Though the relationship between the town and the Cape Cod National Seashore has not always been an acrimonious one, had these lands not been protected, money would have found a way to build on acre after acre after acre. Fast forward almost 50 years, 2015. I was blessed to connect with a daughter that had been put up for adoption in 1972. never knew her in any way, and she never knew of me from where she was from. We met in Provincetown in December of 2015. We connected and closed the some 40-year gaps in her life and mine, and walked the streets of a town she would have been a part of. I showed her the nooks and the crannies and all the memories that hide in them, memories that the all towns, then or now, still can see and feel. After our dinner that first day, I drove us out to the old parking lot strip at New Beach. It was a moonless night, and the overcast blocked out the stars. It flicked off the headlights, and she jumped me. I asked her, "What's wrong?" And she responded, "This is the darkest place I've ever been to." We chuckled, and I agreed, and I proceeded to tell her my old stories and my trips with State Ranger Mr. Delpy and Jimmy, and how unique and desolate some of our stops were. The next day, we came back to New Beach and walked out to Hatches Harbor. As she got closer to the Race Point light, she inquired about us being able to get there. I said, "Tide never gets low enough for you, me, or anyone else to walk across, and we'd have to go out to the race and walk the beach to get there." She was game. Well, like a little kid in the backseat of a car asking, "Are we there yet?" As we walked along the beach out to the lighthouse, I would say, "It's around the corner." And needless to say, I had to repeat "around the corner" several times as the sand slaughter ate up her short 48 legs. Along the way, a whale's tail breached, and my little girl saw it close up and personal. Her iPhone had no charge left, and her digital camera was left in my truck, so she couldn't capture this moment. I turned and ran back to the truck and grabbed her camera and turned and ran back. The whale's breach a one-off. We continued on to the bend at the lighthouse, and one last around the corner. She just stopped and stared at the Atlantic Ocean, rushing into the outer regions of Cape Cod Bay. She felt small. The walk back along the beach didn't seem so long. We then took a ride up Route 6 to head of the meadow and walked west along the beach. She was tickled by the occasional seal that would pop up its head and just stare at us, then disappear until the same one, or another, would pop up. We walked quite a ways. I was hoping to come upon a large pod of seals. She was all of 5 feet tall, and her short legs were wearing down in the sand. Then a black mass appeared in the distance. I told her they were seals. She didn't believe it. She lifted her long lens camera, and sure enough, she saw the mass moving. As we got closer, she asked me, "What is that smell?" I smiled and jokingly said, "Notice they don't wear diapers." She got as close as she dared, and she got a video to prove her findings. I then took her to Pilgrim Springs and even promised her a 300-year-old arrowhead could still be found. She saw the wink in my eye. Then to East Harbor for a walk and another history lesson. We parked at the end of Snails Road, Route 6, and headed into the dunes in search of an aging dune shack. Then took another side trip to Beach Forest to tell her the stories of Henry and Eva Helmer, the only residents on the outskirts of the province lines. Rumor-driven folklore that scared the bejesus out of us teens, necking in our cars at the pond's edge. Had JFK not had the vision to preserve the province lands back in '61, the magic I was able to share with my daughter in 2015 would most likely have been very different. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sheila Colburn, and I was born and raised in Provincetown, 3rd generation. My children were the 4th generation, born and raised in our stunning hometown. My grandfather, Manel Burr Ferreira, came to Provincetown from San Miguel, the capital of the Azorian Islands in Portugal. He was a young boy when he made the long journey by sea with his parents. They landed in Provincetown where they stayed to make their home. His father was a fisherman, and his mother raised their children, a total of 8, and took care of the household while he was at sea. His father was lost at sea in 1917, and my grandfather became the man of the house at 15 years old. We were born into an idyllic setting surrounded by water. Our childhood days spent in Provincetown were made of lazy summer days spent without a care in the world. Most days were spent on the bayside beaches, but Sundays were New Beach Day. Dad was off and we started packing up for our outing on Saturday nights. We had to leave early to get one of those prime parking spots on the Strip. With 6 kids in tow, sometimes more, we were packed in the car pretty tight. Of course, we had enough food to feed an army: umbrellas, chairs, blankets, towels, extra clothes, toys for the water and the sand. You name it, we bought it. Since we were surrounded by friends, family, and our neighbors, if we happened to forget any necessity, that was not a problem. Share and share alike was always the way. My younger siblings were 4 girls that were born a year apart from each other. My mom bought the brightest bathing suits that she could find anywhere. She could then see them even if they were underwater, which is where they spent most of the day, so that she'd see them come out. She knew they were okay. As grown-ups, with children of our own, the beach days continued, but we added days at Hatches Harbor to our weekends. My husband drove our 4-wheel drive truck over the dunes to the delight of our laughing children. Of course, we had to take a side trip over Oh My God Hill, and the kids were screaming, "Do it again, Daddy, do it again, Daddy." We packed in a row of friends with lots of children. Grills were fired up, and there was food aplenty for our long day in God's country. On our 2 daughters' half birthdays, February birthdays that we celebrated in August, we took their friends out, and they loved swimming where the water rushed in. Body surfing and boogie boarding were the day's highlights. If you are looking through most of Provincetown High School's long pointy yearbooks, you will find photos taken on these amazing beaches and some class pictures of individual students as well. Many times you will see people fishing on both of these beaches, and with the sun setting, this calm beauty is one that many locals and tourists alike still enjoy. Race Point is famous for big waves and can be a bit tricky for youngsters that are not yet strong swimmers because the undertow is very strong. We couldn't wait till we were old enough and strong enough to ride these waves with or without our boogie boards. Unfortunately, things have changed on the ocean side up and down the Cape. The increased amount of shark sightings can make this a dangerous undertaking. Many people, braver than I, take a chance and continue to go in these waves. Thankfully, there are many advanced ways to track sharks, but it still can be a risk. The amphitheater was a beautiful, unique setting for Provincetown High School graduations. 2 of our 3 children had their ceremonies there. With the sun, the smell of the salty ocean carried on a breeze, it was a great spot to celebrate the graduating classes. Being a natural setting with no covering, we did have some unusual issues. Lots of bumblebees, big gusts of wind that carried all the papers into the tall grass that people were supposed to be reading, which was fun. Sometimes a passing shower and blistering hot sun other times. But most of us wouldn't have wanted that any other way. Where else can you celebrate an important milestone in a place as picturesque as this, with its majestic dunes and its stunning ocean? Many an engagement and our wedding has been held at Herring Cove or Race Point beaches over the years. The backdrop adds to these memorable occasions. We spent many fun-filled days that weren't warm enough to go swimming at Pilgrim Springs and North Truro. We brought sandwiches and had a picnic on one of the tables, took walks, and played games. In Provincetown, we walked Beach Forest Trail many days. Initials were carved into the initial tree, racing, climbing, and laughing all the way. Those days were well spent. In the winter, if we were lucky, ice skating and our hockey were the games of choice for the youngsters and the not-so-young ones. In our hearts and minds, Herring Cove will forever be New Beach. And Beach Forest will always be Helmer, the last name of the residents that had a house there. We grew up here, and so did our children, and we were blessed to do so. The National Seashore has kept our dunes and beaches from being commercialized. Although we townies miss when we have less restrictions, such as being able to drive over the dunes and our new beach strip, which we miss, we know some of it was necessary, or at least felt necessary at the time. We used to go to the beaches for free, then for $5. Now it is much more costly for that privilege. Other Cape towns kept some of their beaches as town beaches, and the residents pay a minimal fee seasonally to go and enjoy them. Provincetown had the chance to keep some of these natural resources, and they did not elect to do so. In my opinion, this was a huge mistake, or at least I thought so at the time, but now I am not so sure. With Provincetown always in a building frenzy, using every available square inch, even building abutting families' burial plots, I am grateful that the National Seashore took control of our natural beauty for generations and generations after us to enjoy. Thank you from the heart of a townie.
Hello, my name is Russell Sanderson, and I'm a West End native. And there is a difference between the West End and the East End. I will not get into that right now. But as a native, I'm not going to lecture you of, what should have happened, what could have happened, the way I would do it. I'm just going to give you a few incidents that, from my life, growing up in the National Seashore. And we used to call it the park, but everybody got upset when we used to call it the park. So I think we called it the park anyways. Just for spite. Anyway, like, before we had licenses, we'd a lot of beaches, Flyers, West End, and we did a lot of camping. You know, Long Point, boats, campfires, bonfires, lobsters, shellfish, burgers, all that stuff, and skinny dipper. But whatever, I forgot about it. Then the off season, we would move to Helmers, as was mentioned, because they had ponds there. We could do the same, girls, no skinny dipper. And then we get licenses, all this. And jungle cruising was something that we like to do. There were so many roads, especially behind the old football field, Evans Field. And so we would go riding through them, jungle cruising. And I mean, not crazy, but easy. And then, but there was one incident that I remember with my grandfather's Jeep. When I came back, he said, have you been racing through those roads up Canada, up back in the foot? I said, no. He says, well, how come there's leaves in the rod holders with no fishing rods? And I said, oops. Mea culpa. But we did find the rods. Then there was a break north of the deep breakwater out here. And it ended cutting off access to Long Point, which was, heavily driven up to all the time. It was a favorite spot. And the Highland Fish and Game Club tested the Seashore to fill it in. And Seashore's reply was, it will fill in naturally. Access will be restored to Long Point. Well, they were 50% correct. It did fill in naturally, but that was the end of motor vehicle access to Long Point. And there were so many roads from the end of the new beach Herring Cove? Yeah, Herring Cove. You know, through the woods, to the dunes, to the dike, the Hatches Harbors. These roads were closed, you know, eventually by the seashore. Hatches Harbor was the prime destination for local family gatherings, especially on Sundays. And then the birds. Access to all areas of the overseas routes were affected, as status quo today. I won't get into specifics, but that seems to be the case. I remember taking the last ride on the dunes with my wife and son. My son was very, before they implemented the 1981 off-road vehicle management plan. I didn't realize how much I would miss those rides. And they were gone forever. There are a few more memories I'd like to share with you. Actual dates elude me, but I'm not writing a documentary. Some dates might pop up, but probably not. You know, access was required over sand permits, and that was a treat. Often people would be waiting at the permit center 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning to make sure they get their low number. And I was one of them. But the lowest I could get was number 3. Because this guy, Manny Martin, somehow snuck in there and got that number 1 every single year. But he deserved it. You know, and working 12 to 8 as a police officer in Truro, I used to leave work with my Volkswagen with the large tires on the back, and to take many dune roads to get to my house in Provincetown. It was absolutely wonderful to get out of work and just to drive, you know, easy, endlessly. And I must relate just a little bit, but sometimes the MBA, police call bass fishermen, were not too courteous to these new outsiders riding on the beach. And often made obstacles, made it a little difficult and uncomfortable to pass through their territory. Right? But that stopped quickly. I don't know if it was because I had my uniform on and I got out and had to talk to them, but it stopped. But as the relationship became better over the years, the MBBA was essential in the opening up a dialogue between the seashore and the locals. They were paramount in that, and I appreciate that, and I thank them for it. And in the cooperation with the seashore, sometimes there was one problem. There were some worshippers that used to put out, especially down Boston Beach in that area. And so I contributed my services as a ranger, and I rode in my Volkswagen along the strip of beach north of Boston. Many of the sun worshippers waved as we went by. And he had his uniform on. And then we would, but this wasn't a setup really, was it? Then I would stop and turn around, and he would walk back, and then, I think they were only they weren't actual tickets, they were warnings. But also, I remember, when I was reading this today, I remember a protest at the head of the Myrtle Beach, the policy of nude bathing. And there was expected to be a lot of people down there. And so, 2 of my colleagues and I, they were really good people of the Lower Cape, representing the Orleans District Court, thought it would be good for us to go there. And Charles Walsh, as the assistant clerk magistrate, would be there in case there was any arrest to bail them. And Lenny would be the probation officer right there to take all the information, and me as security. I mean, it was a perfect setup. Although we stayed there as long as we could, they never needed our services. They handled it just well, just right, you know. And then I look over to the concert of May 28, 1972. And there's a Ranger Spang story on Cape Cod Woodstock. I think it's on, Peter's the one that knows all, it's online or something. That tells about the whole series of that. But at that time, it was a fundraiser for Bangladesh. And I was a member of the True Police Department at the time. That time, I worked as a peacekeeper along with the Sheriff's Department emergency response team to watch over the crowd of 15,000 people. But we weren't as effective, really, as the Hell's Angels came to care for all the peacekeepers. They did a marvelous job. Unfortunately, they only raised about $350, I think, for the whole thing. But then at the change of the overseeing vehicle permits, there was one time, I can't remember exactly when or where or how, but there was a fear that if you didn't get out there and get a sticker, they would run out and you wouldn't get a sticker. And that day, they made the concert look small. I remember the vehicles lined up from the permit station at Race Point to the lights on Cornwall Street. And alongside of the road on Route 6 up for a while. It was, I don't know how we got through it, but we did. And some people were waiting about 3 a.m. in the morning, waiting for the station to open. But one of my favorite incidents with the National Seashore was Steve McQueen was filming this Crown affair out there. And so, he hired Bob White's and Dune Taxis to, help them out. But I worked for Matt Costa driving beach taxi at the time. He had a brand new Jeep Wagoneer. And a friend of mine, Lenny Enos, he says, geez, it'd be nice to go up there and see him. I said, let me see. So I actually asked Matt if we could use his brand new Jeep Wagoneer to go out there. And believe it or not, he said, yeah. I couldn't believe it. So off we went, being nosy, get a glimpse of what was going on. So off we went. At that time, there was a high dune that all the beach taxis would go up. And then go down another one, and we come up on another high dune. And so we get out there, and we went down, came up the second one. And as we reached the second high dune, I heard a loud whistle. One of those. It was Steve McQueen. Give me right back to the other dune. So I said, sure, jump in. So we opened the door, he goes, ah. So, typical Steve McQueen fashion, he jumped in the back, put his leg over into the Jeep, held on to the top, and said, okay. So I went, I want to go slow, I didn't want to get hurt. He says, come on, piss it, will you? Come on, I'm in a hurry. So we did. Came up. And then again, he didn't even wait for us to stop. He jumped off the back, ran over to this guy, and got a cigarette lighter. And he says, okay, I'm in a hurry, let's go. When we got to the other dune, he jumped off, same way, ran to the crew. And then when the incident was over, I said to Lenny, kind of excited, that was cool, Steve McQueen? Lenny says, not really, I was hoping for Faye Dunaway. I mentioned the birds before. For me, they killed the riding on the beach in the dunes. Then the beach shack problem. And I don't want to get into that any further, just one of the problems that have been dealt with. And I just remembered something now. As access was limited from Long Point to Race Point, I noticed the jetties in front of the new beach were gone. Next thing you know, I also noticed that new beach, as we natives knew it, was also starting to be missed. wasting away into the bay. So there's no yellow brick road for the seashore to the wonderful world of controversies, confrontations, distrust arose at each corner of that road. Even when they reached that magical world of Oz, it was sort of a disappointment. Not exactly what we locals had expected. But as I ride through town and see all the construction on every postage stamp of land, and I say to myself, self, what would one point, Wood End, Race Point, the Back Beach, and the dunes look like if it wasn't for the Cape Cod National Seashore? I think a strong thank you is an honor to the National Seashore. Thank you.
Yep. Ames Johnson, does anybody know? When our writers group agreed to share our memories of the Cape Cod National Seashore, I resisted, and then planned to be sick. At 76, my recollections of the past are either sketchy or completely unreliable. But despite my limitations, I'm here, so I'll do my best. I was born a native of Provincetown. My father moved out of state when I was 4. We never heard from him again. My mother was a 24-year-old single parent with 2 little girls to raise. She had no child support, no car, and very little money. She struggled. But like so many Provincetown natives, we had a lot of relatives here. 4 generations of us and cousins by the dozens, as the story goes. Townies took care of each other. Local fishermen were generous. Fish could be had by asking, if you weren't too proud to ask. Actually, my mother was. But as far as recreation went, we did a lot of walking and learning about the nature that surrounded us. Whether we lived in a year-round rental in the West End, which is the best end, East End, or the middle, it was always just a short walk to the harborside beaches. My mother was a great swimmer. I never was. Sometimes we'd get on the bus and take the 1.9-mile ride to New Beach. The water was colder there because it was closer to where the bay met the ocean. When the tide went out at New Beach, thousands of small rocks and shells were exposed, making it a challenge to get to the water. By the end of the summer, you could tell townies from the visitors. The townies could run across the rocks in bare feet, while the summer people were still gingerly doing their best to advance a foot or 2 without letting on they were in pain. Being tough was my hallmark. A day at New Beach was fun, as the previous speaker said. There were a lot of other families there, and most of them were willing to share their fruit and snacks with kids who had none, like me and my sister. I think the bus ride cost 25 cents. It might have been 10. Either way, it wasn't something my mother could easily afford. I was jealous of the families who owned cars and didn't have to wait for the bus to take them to New Beach. I wished the lowest tides and the hottest sun possible on them for having what I did. I never lived anywhere other than Provincetown, except for a short time when I got married and moved to North Truro, which in 1963 was sparsely settled and referred to as the Sticks. I was still a kid back then. A kid who desperately wanted to escape the authority of my mother. Eventually, my boyfriend and I were allowed to marry, even though neither of us was an adult. I wasn't even old enough to have a driver's license. My husband did, and he loved to spend time doing what most of the local kids with cars did. As a previous speaker said, they called it jungle cruising. That is, driving like a crazy person on those undeveloped paths and back roads, especially the ones leading to the deeper woods. Jungle cruising wasn't for me. I wasn't a trouble seeker, and besides, when the Seashore opened up, park rangers were hired to enforce regulations and put an end to jaunts through the jungle. As if any of us didn't have enough reason to resent authority figures. It's been more than a startling number of years since then. A couple years ago, I moved into a townhouse off Race Point Road. I never lived in that area before. I call it Provincetown North. While unloading mystery boxes, I uncovered something I started writing years ago about my feelings regarding the National Park takeover and the changes planned for New Beach. This is how I saw it back then. I remember many changes in the New Beach area over the course of my life and how I objected to most of them. They all seemed pointless, except for the addition of the bathhouse. The bathhouse was something new and exciting to me as a kid. It had showers and bathrooms and access to drinking water, but the best thing was the relief of being able to have a private place to change from my bathing suit back to my clothes. Instead, I know you all gonna remember this, instead of standing on a blanket with my mother holding a beach towel around me to keep other people's eyes off my nakedness when my bathing suit came off. Grown-ups didn't think it was a big deal if the towel dropped too soon, but I did. Bet my modesty didn't last much longer than the onset of puberty. Back to my old notes. I still don't understand the reasoning behind a lot of the government's plan for the Seashore. The proposed changes that are underway have already interfered with the freedom I've had to take my dogs to the familiar places we've been enjoying for years. Plans and proposals do nothing for me. I'm not much of a visionary. I can't see the future by looking at a drawing, a rough sketch, or similar picture. All I can see is what's been lost in the name of progress. As much as I wanted New Beach to stay the same, it was impossible to deny the ongoing erosion. When I was a kid, the walk in the sand from the parking lot down to the water was long and steep, and unless the tide was very high. And when this hill began to be swallowed up and the strip was in the process of total surrender to the forces of nature, it was clear that something had to be done. Having the privilege of parking with an unobstructed view of the water isn't available to us now, while looking through rows of snow fences. I want back the old privileges that were the lifeblood of all of us who were born and raised here. But more than that, I want the natural landscape and the fragrance of Rosa rugosa restored. In the 60s, almost all of Provincetown was against the National Seashore taking control of such a big part of what made Provincetown so special. I was one of the disgruntled ones. As a kid growing up without the possible opportunities that car provides, my exposure to all of Provincetown's 3 by 3 miles was limited. And my first real introduction to the dunes was when my mother's friend Art Costa, who owned a beach taxi business, offered to take my sister and me out on a tour while my mother was working at Wong's restaurant. We were 9 and 10 at the time, and were very excited about not having to hang around outside the restaurant during my mother's shift. The ride was a lot of fun, but very bumpy on the butt, which was the same story I had much later on a horseback trail ride I signed up for at Nelson's Riding Stables. Sitting on the back of the horse, the dunes looked the same, but the ride was different. a profound spiritual experience for me. Until I took advantage of what was available, I had no conception of how vast the dunes were, how infinite the ocean was, or how fortunate I was to live close to them. After the area became part of the National Seashore, the dune tour business continued and is still one of the most popular in Provincetown. But the stables are long gone and have been replaced by condos. No big surprise. Between the uncontrolled ravaging of what Provincetown used to be and the uncontrolled rebuilding of it into a place where only the rich can truly thrive, there is very little still recognized by people who have left and come back for occasional visits. Over the years, I was blessed to discover a few places away from all the usual tourist attractions, where my faith in God and the natural order of life have become my salvation. When I'm out walking in the areas that mean so much to me, it's impossible not to think about what they might look like now if in early August 1961 JFK had not signed a bill into establishing the Cape Cod National Seashore. In my life as an adult, most of my memories were made on the bike trails and hiking in beech forests with my kids. Picking blueberries in their secret paths was part of our routine. My mother worked well into her 80s, still with no car license. She died 6 years ago at 90. I still treasure the memory of our best Mother's Day. Before Mother's Day came, I was wondering what I could do for my mother that would be different and as special as she had become to me. I hadn't always felt that way about her. I was a rebellious kid way longer than I should have been. By choice, she lived her life modestly, still worked, had no credit cards, no debts, and no driver's license. Too many knickknacks and family photos and frames on the fridge, a million mugs, and enough of everything. She was content, grateful. I, on the other hand, had no money, lots of debt, very little time, and no idea what kind of gift to get a woman I love, who was satisfied, lived in a small apartment, needed and wanted nothing more to dust, wear, or eat. Mother's Day came and went, but the day after that, rather than bringing a gift to her, I brought her to a gift. A perfect gift. I got her in my car with a stash of stale bread on the floor and didn't tell her where we were going. It was a surprise, which was something I could never pull off successfully in the past. I drove her out to Beech Forest, where two mama geese were showing off their recently hatched little ones while dads were keeping watch. Those two geese families with 11 happy goslings between them put on their best and most endearing show for us for 20 minutes. They brought genuine tears of joy to my mother's eyes and laughter to her heart. I might not have known what the perfect Mother's Day gift was, but the God we believed in certainly did. Before I take my seat, there's one last place I want to mention, but I promise I'll be brief. Nothing about the Cape Cod National Seashore compares to the love I have for East Harbor. It's my favorite place in the seashore and possibly the world. East Harbor has taught me so much just by allowing me to be there. How else would I know that hermit crabs are cannibalistic? I wouldn't and didn't until I sat among them and witnessed it myself. Once upon a time, East Harbor, also known as Pilgrim Lake, was nothing more to me than a mysterious body of water at the foot of the dunes, a putrid marsh whose underwater inhabitants I never wished to explore. I grew up being told it was off limits to people. I figured there was undiscovered evil in there. 25 years ago, I met an extraordinary woodsman. Not extraordinary, but extraordinary. Who spent most of his life exploring overlooked beaten paths everywhere, and said Provincetown was his favorite of all places he'd been, including a few months he spent in Honduras. He showed me deer paths, ponds, and other areas which had been completely unfamiliar to me, areas he hoped would remain undiscovered. He died from cancer at the end of 2012, but I still visit the places he introduced me to. They are my respites from the summer chaos of an overpopulated tourist town. I haven't made my way into East Harbor yet this year, but my dog and I will be there in our bare feet as soon as the sun stays out for more than 2 days in a row and water temperature rises above 54. Thank you.
I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the city where the Wright brothers grew up, the birthplace of aviation.
You gotta be
At
loud.
17
Can you hear me louder?
At 17 years old, I moved to Cape Cod with my childhood friend. Our family visited Cape every year. It was 1966. Can you hear me? I had never seen the ocean nor a sand dune. It was a sight I will never forget. Provincetown was the name of my new home. Little did I know it would be my home for the rest of my life. It was early May, so tourists had not yet arrived. I met all the kids that lived here, including the boy I would later marry. He's the one who's the speaker today. We spent our time on the dunes of the National Seashore in the beautiful North Atlantic Ocean. We planned our wedding and decided to get married on Long Point. All of our friends had vehicles that could drive on the sand. The ranger said if all was okay, and if there was a problem weather-wise, we could use the visitor center where we are today. The rain storm of the year came. My husband gave me a horse as a gift when I was in my 20s. It was stabled at Nelson's Horseback Riding Stable near the sand dunes. I rode my horse Domenico many days through the dunes down to the beautiful ocean shoreline beach. The time spent out there was wonderful. As time passed, I wanted to explore the dunes. I would get up early in the morning and drive to the big sand dune near Pilgrim Lake. At that time, during those years, it was a big open parking lot available to the public. The parking lot has since been closed down. I had 2 German shepherds named Bruno and Raza. We would run up and down the sand dunes till we reached the ocean. It was a paradise for me, experiencing the beauty and freedom of nature. I never saw anyone out there. It belonged to me for a long time till summer's end. Now in my same home of 52 years since my wedding day, I look out my window and I can see Long Point Lighthouse and the harbor of Provincetown. Within my view of the curve of Truro and beyond to Wellfleet. I remember watching for my husband's fishing boat to come around Long Point, returning from the customary 2-week fishing trips far offshore on Georgia's banks. The other wives would call me and ask if there was any sign of the boat. I was the lookout for all their safe returns. My view was perfect. Perfect, it was always a beautiful sight to see the boat safe and sound. The wives would gather on the wharf to collect their husbands. It was always a happy time. I remember taking a ride from Provincetown Airport on a sightseeing biplane named Lily. It flew over the dunes and the shoreline of the North Atlantic Ocean. As it flew over Provincetown, I could see my home on Cape Cod. I'll always remember the Wright brothers when I'm up in the sky looking down at this beautiful place. I thank the Cape Cod National Seashore Rangers for protecting this place so many call home. My thanks to the Seashore Rangers for hosting my wedding day on top of the great sand dune overlooking the ocean, where my husband and I often come to watch sunsets and the stars at night. raised our 2 boys here in Provincetown, and now they are men. They spent their youth enjoying their boats, swimming, fishing, and doing all the fun things that Cape Cod has to give. Lifelong friendships and happy memories. Now our grandchildren are growing up and enjoying a life here. They're 5th generation Portuguese. The great-great-grandfather migrated to Provincetown from San Miguel in the Azores. He, like so many other fishermen, sought a better life. My husband and I twice have traveled to the beautiful island of San Miguel to visit his grandparents' birthplace. My husband was born in Provincetown, and we will travel to San Miguel again this year. Time marches on, and we have a long time to smile looking back at our lucky lives and the time ahead to look forward to. One never knows what the future holds, but I think time will give us plenty of wonderful days. Thank you for being here.
Last but I hope not least, I see her all still here, so I'll try to get through this story. Aren't these people wonderful, these writers? Our stories are growing up in Provincetown, and there's not a lot of us left in Provincetown, so it makes it really unique that we're able to get together. We've been meeting for several years, every Tuesday at the Commons, from 10 to 12, and we've had a wonderful time doing it. Hope we can do it for a while longer. Well, you know, I'm Peter Cook, and I was born in Provincetown in 45. My grandfather Manuel was a fisherman and immigrated to Provincetown from the Portuguese Azorian Islands like Congress and San Miguel. Between 1820 and 1920, there were over 160 whaling vessels that sailed from Provincetown, making over 900 voyages. It was routine for Provincetown whaling ships to sail to and from the Azores, provided the opportunity for Provincetown, for Portuguese fishermen to take a job on a whaling ship to reach America, and many of them did. By 1895, a quarter of Provincetown population was Portuguese. My father, my children, my grandchildren were all born in Provincetown, making us a multi-generational Provincetown family. I've lived here my entire life and seen a lot of changes, from kerosene stoves, and you really remember those kerosene stoves, modern heating systems now. Ice boxes replaced with refrigerators. A home with no TV or telephone to a TV capable of getting stations from around the world. I've even got a smartphone, and I can ask it anything. It'll give me a wealth of information. How about that GPS? Ain't that something? When we were young children, like Russell mentioned, just old enough to go out and play on our own, we played around our West End neighborhoods. As we grew older, we explored and played out behind the town in the wooded areas we simply called the woods. We skated on frozen ponds in the wintertime and built forts for camping overnight in the woods in the summertime. One day while exploring in the woods, we heard an unusual sound of machines, and we went to have a look. The biggest machines we ever saw were building roads. Route 6 was under construction. A lot of men were building the road with machines we had never seen. Graders, earth movers, bulldozers, and dump trucks. Right there in our woods. We were young kids back then. We couldn't wait to be 16 years old to get our driver's license. We enjoyed riding with the older kids who took us riding on the beaches and sand dunes and the outback of Provincetown, where we wanted to drive. At 17 years old, I worked 2 jobs, a full-time job at a local gas station on Bradford Street that's now a Cape Cod 5 bank. And I drove sand dune tours for Arts Beach Taxi, and I loved driving on the dunes and the beaches. I learned a lot about driving on the sand from Art Costa, and I learned a lot about Provincetown's history from Art. I built my own beach buggy out of a Volkswagen Bug on my time off. I surf fished along all the shores of Provincetown. We local guys drove on the beaches from the tip of Long Point, along the shore of Wood End, all the way past Grace Point, to fish along Picket Hill, we simply called the backside. Many nights we built a campfire, had coffee, slept on the beach. Sometimes we cleaned off a shovel with sand and salt water and used the shovel as a frying pan to cook up a striped bass for supper. The freedom of my lifestyle was about to change. In 1961, the Cape Cod National Seashore was established by President John F. Kennedy. At first it was only on paper. The Seashore land encompassed 43,607 acres within Cape Cod, and 4,000 acres of Provincetown became part of the National Seashore. In the beginning, seashore rules were less restrictive. Our past practice of driving out to Long Point to fish and camp went on as usual, but the National Seashore began implementing more comprehensive regulations, trying to balance recreational access with resource protection. New regulations. Designated driving corridors soon restricted freewheel driving. Driving on the beach required permits. At first they were free. Soon the fees were implemented and slowly increased. More and more areas were closed off to vehicles altogether, like Russell talked about. We were no longer allowed to drive to Wood End and out to Long Point. The life I knew and loved was forever changed when Volkswagen beach buggies were no longer permitted to drive on any beaches. I never understood why I could no longer drive my Volkswagen beach buggy on the beach. It was the least invasive vehicle out there. The picture of it here. We locals loved and respected our natural environment, like Long Point and Wood End. The solitude and fishing was great. My memories highlight a different era. Back in the day, I understood the importance of the National Seashore environmental concerns. Sort of. No more sleeping on the beach, no campfires without a special permit, campfires in designated areas only. Who ever heard of such things? No more horseback riding trails throughout the dune. My wife and I loved riding horses out in the sand dunes and along the beaches. It was our way of life in Provincetown. I continued to ride for arts dune tours throughout my lifetime and drove for other tour companies as well. Before the days of the National Seashore, local drivers had an unwritten rule. When we spotted a nesting bird, we got out of our vehicle and placed a stick upright to protect the site. But now it's 2025. Our sons grew up in Provincetown with the National Seashore in place. They understood the importance of conservation. Each time I began when I was young, before there was a National Seashore, my sons would say, "Yes, Dad, but times change. There are a lot more people here now with a lot of four-wheel drive vehicles. Can you imagine if all the thousands of people here now were allowed to drive all over the sand dunes and beaches, going anywhere they wanted to go, anytime they wanted to go, like you used to do?" Today, I say with all my heart, thank God for JFK and our Cape Cod National Seashore. A person need not be 80 years old to see what happened and continues to happen to Provincetown. Under the pretense of affordable housing, construction runs riot. It's out of control, unchecked. Zoning and building codes are a thing of the past. Big money has its grip on our little town. My way of life is now old history. Our overdevelopment is covering every piece of available land. Construction projects are going on all over Provincetown. Condos and more. None of them are affordable to working class families, nor are they intended to be. These days, my wife and I enjoy a drive throughout the seashore roads, and we thank God for the Cape Cod National Seashore. Imagine what all this beautiful land would look like, covered up with houses, restaurants, hotels, condos, and God only knows what else is out here. Look at the pictures. That's Provincetown. I drive with my young children throughout the forest, throughout this forested land. We enjoy the visitor center, and we walk through beach forest trails. Our sons grew up ice skating and playing hockey in the pond at Beach Forest and enjoying the National Seashore. I've lived a long lifetime in Provincetown. I saw the old wooden wharf in town called Railroad Wharf being replaced in the 50s with a concrete pier renamed Millen Pier. I was just a young boy as I watched the municipal parking lot being built downtown Provincetown. In 1964, I graduated from Provincetown High School, and I already knew how to drive on the beaches and sand dunes. local people were good at driving in the sand. It wasn't necessary to have a four-wheel drive vehicle. A two-wheel drive was good enough if you let enough air out of the tires and you knew how to drive. Our fun was to bring an old car hood and a long rope out to the dunes, turn the hood upside down, and tie it off the back of your tow vehicle. We used the hood as a sled, with a boat cushion in the hood to sit on, because it got really hot as you were dragging along. Those were the days before the Cape Cod National Seashore. Many years ago, there were not a lot of people driving on the beaches and sand dunes. A few drove out there to get to the dune shacks. Some used that beach taxi to get back and forth. Joe Drew had a beach taxi that operated from Race Point. A letter written in 1952 by the wife of the Race Point light station keeper mentions, in summertime, this is a busy place with Joe Drew's beach taxi bringing sightseers several times a day and fishermen all night. Imagine if that lightkeeper's wife was able to see Provincetown now. We grew up in this incredible place with all its wildlife and sea life, a stopover of breeding ground for over 370 recorded bird species. I love the birds. We were immersed in this glorious nature of our local environment. Thank you, John F. Kennedy, for your foresight in creation of our Cape Cod National Seashore as it continues to protect our environment. Did John F. Kennedy foresee this 4,000 acres of Provincetown covered with hotels and condos and restaurants and homes? I don't know. Today, I brought poster boards with photos of Provincetown's ongoing construction, or destruction as I call it. I also brought photos of this splendid Cape Cod National Seashore that we are all thankful for. Okay, I skipped a page. Special thanks to Alicia Scott, up here in the back, not District Supervisor of Interpretation and Education. She made today's presentation possible. Thank you very much. Thank you to David and the friends. Thank you to David and the Friends of the Cape Cod National Seashore, and they helped to make this a fundraiser for the seashore possible. There's a little collection can if you care to put a couple of bucks in it. They do a lot of support, like you said in the beginning, to help things keep going. Thank you to the Visitor Center for hosting our group today and for hosting our wedding here in this great auditorium 52 years ago. Thank you to my son Peter, our videographer in the back of the room today. With his expertise, this reading will be available to the Seashore, if they still want it, and to the Provincetown Television, PTV, and it'll also be available on YouTube. To record, edit, and make ready a presentation like this takes many hours of editing. We all thank you, Peter, for what you do. My thanks to, look at my thanks to our dedicated writers, Mel and Sheila and Davis and Russell and Tanya. You know, it's a lot of fun doing these things. We've done readings at the high school building that we all went to school in, the Veterans Memorial School building, my old garage down on Provincetown, on Bradford Street, since to now the Provincetown Theater Playhouse. I had a garage there for 15 years. But it's fun to go back and do all these memory readings. Thank you all. Thank you from all of us to our audience for listening to us and for supporting the Friends of the National Seashore. Thank you very much.